A year ago at this time, Cindy and I were in North Carolina visiting our daughter Rachel when COVID hit and the doors of our nation started slamming shut. We paid through the nose to get an earlier flight home because we were concerned that we might not get home. You remember how that was? And I returned to discover that our team had prepared for me to preach my very first ever online sermon. So this is what you would have seen a year ago today as I preached my first COVID lockdown message in our sanctuary. Now let me show you what I was looking at that time. This, an empty room, a camera, and a sound man. That was it. I had never preached to an empty room before, and I didn't like it. I didn't know if I was connecting with you. I didn't know how long to pause after a joke, or if you were even laughing. I didn't even know if you were out there or not. It was one of the emptiest experiences of my ministry. I missed the crowd. I realized how much I feed off the Sunday crowd. And I cannot tell you how glad I am that week by week, the crowd is starting to return. I'm glad we can come to you in our homes via the internet, but I didn't sign up to be a TV preacher. I really love connecting with a room full of people. And for preachers, honestly, a big crowd is one of our measures of success. The bigger the crowd, the more successful you are. Unless you are Jesus. We're in a series called Jesus, the Subversive Leader. And one thing is clear. Jesus had a very different definition of success. In today's story, where he calls 12 disciples, I want you to notice how he disrupts our standards of success by saying no to three things: no crowds, no chemistry, and no complexity. I know it's kind of confusing. Let's read it together and I'll unpack it. Mark 3. And Jesus went up on the mountain and called to him those whom he desired, and they came to him. And he appointed 12, whom he also named apostles, so that they might be with him, and he might send them out to preach and have authority to cast out demons. He appointed the 12, Simon, to whom he gave the name Peter, James the son of Zebedee, and John the brother of James, to whom he gave the nickname Boanerges, that is, sons of thunder, Andrew and Philip and Bartholomew and Matthew and Thomas, and James the son of Alphaeus, and Thaddeus, and Simon the Zealot, and Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him. In this brief story, Jesus disrupts three of our ideas of what success looks like. His first subversive idea: no crowds. Bigger is not necessarily better. One of the predominant definitions of success in our culture is popularity. A bigger customer base, more market share, more likes or subscriptions than the other guy. If you have 1 million followers online, you are a mega influencer and can command $1 million per post. If you only have 999,999 followers, then you are a mere macro influencer. And we pastors are suckers for the popularity definition of success. The bigger the crowd, the better. We say that we want more people to hear the gospel of Jesus, and that's true. But honestly, the whole size thing plays to our basest instincts. Every year I meet with a group of pastors of large churches, more than 1,000 in worship. But this January, I pointed out to that group that as a result of COVID, none of us qualified to be in our own group because none of us has 1,000 worshipers. So how do we think about our ministry, our sense of value and purpose? When we define success by butts in the pews, and those butts are suddenly gone, what is our new measure of success? It's not that Jesus didn't draw large crowds. By the time we reach this story in the first part of chapter 3, Mark has already mentioned 10 times the huge crowds that were following Jesus. He was massively popular. But the focus of Christ's ministry was not the masses. It was 12 men, a small group, a life group, as we call it. And it must have been way more exciting to receive the adoration of thousands, but that was not Jesus' definition of success. For Jesus, success would be when his small band of apprentices was able to carry on his ministry without him. This is a hard one for me because I want our crowds back. There are 800 Chapel Hill folks who have not returned to in-person worship, and I miss them. Worshiping in front of a TV, as good as it might be, is not the same as being with the rest of your church family. And I will continue to invite you to return when you are able. But I need to be reminded that for Jesus, the discipleship that took place in small, intimate groups was the most important and strategic part of his ministry. Corporate worship is important, but not enough. And for those who only come to be a part of the Sunday crowd, you are not tapping into what Jesus, by his example, defined as the single most important mechanism for disciple making: a dedicated, accountable, small group with an effective leader. I am thrilled to say that since COVID, 500 new people, 500, have joined life groups at our church. That may be the single greatest unexpected mark of success in this last year. If you aren't in a life group, a small accountability group, I would suggest that you are depriving yourself of an essential tool for your own spiritual growth. And to many of you leaders who have been reluctant to step forward and lead a group of your own, may I just say, your time has come. We need you. So Jesus' model of success includes no crowds, and then amazingly, no chemistry. What do I mean by that? We recently had a consultant that met with our staff to help us increase our effectiveness as a team. And one of the things he emphasized was the importance of chemistry. Every member of your team must share the same values and culture in order to create an environment that will produce the greatest success. Chemistry. But when you look at Jesus' 12 apprentices, you realize that chemistry was not a big concern for the master. Peter was an impulsive control freak. Brothers James and John had a nickname which can be translated the airbags. They were loud-mouthed hotheads. And then there was Matthew, the tax collector, a despised Roman collaborator, and Simon. Simon's nickname said it all. He was a zealot, a member of a terrorist organization committed to armed revolution against Rome. Now, what was the chemistry between Matthew and Simon, do you think? The collaborator and the terrorist. And then there was a guy named Judas. Why in the world would Jesus, who seemed to know everything, why would he bring a guy on board that he knew was going to betray him and the rest of his team? If chemistry is your mark of success, if shared values and culture define effective leadership, then Jesus might have been a failure, unless he was more interested in what he was going to create out of this motley crew than in what they brought to the game. In verse 14, it says that Jesus appointed 12 to be his apostles. But that word appointed is actually the Greek word for made. Jesus didn't pick 12 talented guys to form a cohesive team. Jesus chose 12 whom he could make into the men he needed them to be. I think this is enormously important for us to grasp, especially in this season. We are tempted to surround ourselves with those like us. Republicans hang out with Republicans, Democrats with Democrats. Racial turmoil has reminded us how little we know and understand of those of another color, much less spend time with them. If chemistry is a mark of success, then we are in trouble as a people. But Jesus, on purpose, called together people of incredible diversity. people who even hated one another's guts. And then he began to make them into his people, united not around race or religion or politics or class, but around one factor. They were fellow apprentices of Jesus Christ, fully submitted to his recreation of them. I hope in this increasingly divided culture that is hell-bent on silencing minority voices of opposition and canceling anything out of step, I pray we will be people who come together despite our differences, because we all understand that we need to be remade into disciples of Jesus. His creation, not our chemistry, is the mark of success. So, no crowds, no chemistry, and finally, no complexity. When you look at Jesus' job description for his apprentices, it was simple. I can't help but notice this because at Chapel Hill, we put a lot of energy into defining our goals that are measurable, audacious, and yet attainable. We have 60-day goals and 120-day goals and 1-year goals, and before COVID, we had 5-year goals. And we list these goals on a dashboard and report our weekly progress with red lights, yellow lights, or green lights. And then I look at Jesus' job description. He appointed 12 so that they might be with him and he might send them. That's it. Be and send. Not very complex. The first and most important mark of a successful apprentice was to be with Jesus. He always prioritized his relationship with his disciples. Some of my colleagues pointed out that in this last year, as part of my own coping with the pressures of COVID, I pulled back and became less collaborative and more isolated. I think they were right. And so I have made it a priority to reach out to individual members of my great team, to eat with them and share our lives with no agenda. And it has been an encouragement to me. I hope it's been an encouragement to my work friends as well. That, more than anything, is what Jesus wanted from his disciples, to be with them. So how are you doing at just being with Jesus on a daily basis? Because it is only then that we are able to be sent by Jesus to do his work. Be and send. And even that part of the job description wasn't very complex. There were 2 things. He sent them out to preach and have authority to cast out demons. In other words, to talk about Jesus and to battle with evil. When we spend time with Jesus, when we get to know him and his ways, when he begins to make us into the people we are destined to be, it is then that we have something to say. We can speak about Jesus from personal experience. We can help broken people because we can point them to the one who mended our brokenness. We can forgive shameful people because Jesus forgave our shame. In other words, we can talk about Jesus and his ways because we know him. I sometimes hear people say, I don't talk about Jesus, I just let my life be my witness. And it's a good thing to live a life of integrity. But your good example will never save anybody. Only Jesus can. And if you don't ultimately tell them why you live as you do, you are withholding salvation from them. So when was the last time that you actually spoke well of Jesus? But notice this, we are also called to speak against what is evil. He gave them the authority to cast out demons. Too often Christians are only known for what they are against. I realize that. But here it is clear that at least part of our Christian witness means discerning what is evil and having the courage to battle it. Sometimes that battle will simply be speaking up for Jesus and his people and his ways against bullies who are increasingly bold in their attacks. I saw a TikTok this last week in which someone described Jesus as a racist. That is evil, and it deserves condemnation. And sometimes that battle against evil will be a spiritual one in which we actually contend with demonic forces who are destroying the lives of those we know and love. These forces are very real. And part of our job description includes grappling with them in the name and in the power of Jesus Christ. It is frightening and it requires some training, but spiritual warfare is a part of our calling. So we are called to be with Jesus and to be sent by Jesus, to speak well of Him and to stand up against evil. That's our job description. If you were measuring the success of your own apprenticeship against those simple standards, how would you grade yourself? I've said it before, I think 2020 was a great year in many ways. It has stripped away the most obvious and easiest way to be a Christian in our culture, which is joining crowds at church on a Sunday morning. And it has driven us into a simpler, deeper life of discipleship, one in which we are invited to love those who are not like us, one in which we are invited to focus on our personal relationship with Christ in the context of a small group of fellow disciples, and one in which we use our words to speak of Jesus and have the courage to stand against evil when we encounter it. No crowds, no chemistry, no complexity. It's as simple as that. And that is what Jesus defined as success. Would you pray with me? Lord, I thank you for the model of your ministry that we find in this story today. God, please remind us that it's not all about being a part of the crowd. It's not about following what is popular. Please remind us that you are inviting us into an intimate relationship with Jesus, where we get to know Him. He makes Himself known to us in new and powerful and fresh ways, where we walk with a handful of people who hold us accountable. And I pray, Lord, that you would stir us to these simple calls to discipleship, that because we come to know you in a richer way, we will have the courage to speak for you when in times past we have neglected to do so. And we will have the courage to stand against evil when we encounter it. All of this is only possible because your Spirit lives within us, Lord Jesus. And so even now we pray that you would fill us anew with the power that can come only from belonging to you, the risen Son of God, in whose name we pray. Amen.
Thank you so much for watching, and if you love these videos, feel free to check out all the links in the description below. Also, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. We will see you in the next video.